It happened on an ordinary Thursday. Through the glass doors of our patio I heard him laugh. "She's basically my assistant, not my partner." His friends roared with approval. I set the bottle of wine down and decided, tonight the partnership ends. Before we continue, thank you for being here and diving into Clara's journey. If you believe no woman should ever be diminished for her success, hit subscribe. It's free and it helps empower more voices like hers. Now let's begin. The smell of grilled rosemary steak still lingered in the air when I froze at the edge of the living room. The men's laughter rolled through the open doors like thick smoke, Evan's voice the loudest of all. He was holding court again, gesturing dramatically, his glass of Bordeaux catching the amber light. "She's good with spreadsheets," he was saying, "but let's be honest, Clara doesn't lead. She supports. I'm the face of Viridian Analytics. He's the system behind it. My assistant, basically." They all laughed, and one of them, Mason, our finance director and supposedly my friend, raised his glass. "To the visionary," he toasted. "The man who built a company from nothing." The company. My company. I'd built Viridian from a spare bedroom and a second-hand laptop while Evan bounced between failed startups and grand ideas that died by the third PowerPoint slide. I stood there, invisible in my own home, watching the man who once called me partner bask in applause for work he'd never done. They were sitting around my outdoor furniture, the teak set I'd saved for 6 months to buy, drinking wine from my private collection, under the fairy lights I'd strung last summer. Evan's charm had always been magnetic in public. But tonight, hearing it turned against me felt like swallowing glass. Mason chuckled. "You know, Evan, I was worried she'd outgrow you someday." Evan smirked. "She tried. But I'm not too worried. She doesn't have the temperament for leadership. She's great at execution though. Structured, disciplined, good with numbers." Execution. That was the word men like him used when they didn't want to say, "the person who does all the work." I stepped back behind the curtain before they could see me. My heart was pounding, not from shock but from clarity. Something inside me shifted, quiet and irreversible. I'd known for months something had been festering. His strategy dinners. The sudden secrecy around his calendar. The way he flinched when I walked into his home office. And that new phone he claimed was just for clients. But this was the moment the mask fell. I set the wine bottle on the marble counter. My hands were steady, almost frighteningly so. I'd learned early in business that silence unnerved people more than rage ever could. When you build a company brick by brick, every invoice, every sleepless night, you don't scream when someone tries to steal it. You plan. Through the glass, Mason poured more wine. "By the way, when's that expansion launch you mentioned?" "Next quarter," Evan said, swirling his glass. "We'll announce it once we've restructured leadership. You know, made a few adjustments." Restructured leadership. Adjustments. He was talking about me. I stepped outside, my heels clicking against the patio stone. The laughter died instantly, their smiles freezing mid-breath. Evan turned, his practiced grin faltering as our eyes met. "Clara, hey, we didn't hear you come out." "I'm sure you didn't," I said evenly, setting the stakes on the table. "Wouldn't want to interrupt your little board meeting." Nathan, the one who'd once flirted with me at our Christmas party, shifted uncomfortably. Mason looked away. But Evan, still trying to salvage his image, chuckled. "We were just joking. You know how we are." "Yes," I said. "I do." I looked around the table. For men who'd eaten my food, drunk my wine, toasted my success when it benefited them, and now applauded my erasure. "Since you think I'm just your assistant," I said calmly, "consider this my resignation." Evan blinked, confused. "What are you talking about? Why wait for next quarter to restructure leadership? Let's do it tonight. You can have your company, your version of it, anyway. I'll take mine." And with that I turned and walked back inside. Behind me there was stunned silence. The kind that follows when power shifts so suddenly it sucks the air out of the room. In the kitchen I leaned against the counter, letting the adrenaline settle. I wasn't angry, not yet. Anger would come later when the truth unfolded. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Check your office tomorrow morning. You need to see what he's planning." No name. No context. Just those words. I reread it 3 times, my reflection faintly visible in the black screen. Eyes sharp, expression unreadable. Somewhere outside, Evan's laughter had resumed, weaker now, forced. He thought I'd simply walked away in humiliation. He had no idea I'd just decided to end the game he didn't even know I'd been watching. At 7:42 a.m. I unlocked my office and froze. On my desk sat a small silver USB drive, no note, no envelope, just a label that read, Project Echo. And that was the moment I realized Evan's betrayal wasn't emotional. It was strategic. Before we dive in, thank you for following Clara's story. If you believe betrayal can be turned into power, hit subscribe. It's free and it helps share more stories like this one. Now let's continue. My office always smelled faintly of coffee and cedar. That morning it smelled like warning. I stared at the USB drive for a long moment before touching it. The blinds were half open, early Seattle light painting narrow lines across my desk. Down the hall I could hear the faint hum of the espresso machine, the click of someone's heels. Normal sounds. But everything inside me whispered that nothing was normal anymore. I plugged the drive into my laptop. The screen blinked. One folder. Project Echo. Inside, dozens of PDFs, screenshots and recorded phone calls. The first file was named Behavioral Evidence 1. I clicked it open and felt my stomach tighten. It was an email from me to our senior analyst Gina, about late-night work on a client proposal. But in the comments, Evan had annotated it. Example of obsessive behavior. Overworking to avoid intimacy. Potential instability. My throat went dry. Another file, photos of me at my desk time-stamped after midnight. The same handwriting in digital notes. She's losing balance. I'll document this pattern. He'd been cataloging me like a case study. There were transcripts too, recordings of meetings, small arguments spliced and reworded. I remembered one. A disagreement over a marketing budget. I'd raised my voice once. He'd titled the file, Emotional Volatility 3. When I reached a folder labeled Assets and Transition, I stopped breathing. It contained a draft contract for Viridian Consulting Group, registered under Evan Reeves, CEO. The new company's logo was eerily similar to ours. Clients were listed, my clients, under pending acquisition. He wasn't just planning to divorce me. He was planning to replace me. I closed the laptop and pressed my palms against the cool surface of the desk. Outside, Gina tapped gently on the door. Clara? You have a call in 5. Her eyes flicked to my face and widened. You look like you saw a ghost. Something like that, I said quietly. Can you close the door, please? She hesitated, then nodded. When the door clicked shut, I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in years. Lauren Pierce. Attorney. Old friend. The one who'd handled our incorporation papers back when everything between Evan and me still felt like a shared dream. She answered on the second ring. Clara Reeves. I had a feeling I'd hear from you again someday. What's wrong? Do you have 10 minutes? For you always. I drove to her office downtown, my fingers gripping the steering wheel tighter than I realized. The city looked the same, gray clouds over Elliott Bay, cranes stretching toward the skyline, but I felt like I'd stepped into a different version of it. One where my own husband was the enemy. Lauren greeted me in her corner office, all sharp lines and calm authority. You look like someone just kicked your empire, she said, half joking, half assessing. I set the USB on her desk. He's been building another company. Using my data. My clients. My name. Her brows arched slightly. Show me. Within minutes, her tone shifted from lawyerly patience to laser focus. This isn't an affair, she murmured, scrolling through the files. This is corporate sabotage. And if these documents are legitimate, you've got him cold. She turned her screen toward me. See here? The timestamps. The LLC registration under his name. The trademark filing for Viridian Consulting Group. He filed this 2 weeks ago, listing himself as founder and sole shareholder. I stared at the date. The same day I'd landed a $6 million client contract with Quantro Systems. He'd been celebrating that night, with me. Lauren leaned back. He's laying the groundwork to claim you're mentally unstable and unfit to manage operations. He'll use that to seize control both legally and reputationally. It's classic gaslighting, but in corporate form. Project Echo, I said under my breath. What? That's what he called it. Folder. It's poetic in a twisted way. Everything I say he echoes, distorted, manipulated, reflected back until I don't recognize myself. Lauren's jaw tightened. Then we start building our own echo. Documentation, witnesses, timestamps. We stay quiet for now. The less he knows, the better. I nodded, but my hands were trembling. Not from fear. Fear had burned away somewhere between the first and second PDF. This was calculation now. That evening, as the rain began to fall outside my apartment, I replayed the recordings alone. In one clip, Evan's voice was calm, almost soothing. By the time this is over, everyone will know I was the one who held it together. Pause. The sound of a wine glass clinking. Clara thinks she built Viridian. She forgets I'm the reason anyone takes her seriously. I pressed pause. The room was silent except for the soft hum of my laptop fan. People like Evan didn't destroy you with one blow. They eroded you slowly, turning your strength into ammunition, your devotion into evidence. I opened a new folder on my desktop and named it Reconstruction. Inside it I began my counterplan. Every bank statement. Every invoice. Every internal message that proved who really ran Viridian. Every time I'd bailed out his visionary projects. Every transfer I'd made from my personal savings to cover his failed campaigns. By midnight the folder was 3 gigabytes. And I was done being the assistant in anyone's story. Clara, Lauren said, sliding a folder across her desk. He's already met with 2 lawyers. But don't panic because we're going to be faster. By Monday morning I wasn't shaking anymore. I'd spent the weekend labeling every file, every receipt, every timestamp that proved Viridian Analytics was mine. What used to be our shared office now felt like a chessboard. And I finally understood the rules. Lauren had set up a secure drive. She called it Project Mirror. If he's going to reflect lies, she'd said, we'll reflect truth, backed by evidence. We met daily for the next week. My life became a series of spreadsheets, scanned documents, and whispered phone calls from stairwells. Lauren's paralegal, a brilliant woman named Ada, helped cross-reference timestamps between Evan's fake instability reports and our official records. The irony was poetic. Every moment he documented as proof of my breakdown matched perfectly with my verifiable client wins. When he claimed I'd ignored him for days, I was in New York closing the Quantro Systems deal. When he said I obsessively worked late, it aligned with a major contract that doubled our revenue. He hadn't realized he was logging his own irrelevance. So one question haunted me. Who had left that USB drive on my desk? Gina, our senior analyst, was the last person I suspected. She was loyal, sharp, and usually quiet. But that Tuesday afternoon when I caught her glancing toward Evan's empty office, her expression gave something away. Gina, I said gently, closing the door. You know something. She hesitated. I shouldn't even be telling you this. I already know about Project Echo. Her eyes widened. Then you know it's worse than you think. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her messages. He's been meeting with Mason, after hours. Says it's about financial restructuring. But they've been moving client retainer funds to another account under Viridian Consulting Group. My pulse quickened. Do you have proof? She nodded. I've been forwarding the alerts to myself. I couldn't watch it anymore. She handed me her phone. The evidence was there. Wire transfers, signature authorizations, and internal memos listing Evan Reeves, founder and CEO. When I looked up, Gina's expression was nervous but resolute. I didn't want to lose my job, Clara. But I also couldn't lose respect for myself. I reached across the desk and took her hand. You did the right thing. And you're not going to lose anything. That night I sent everything to Lauren. Her reply came 5 minutes later. He's setting himself up for corporate fraud. Do not confront him yet. Let him keep digging. The deeper he goes, the easier it is to bury him with paperwork. By Thursday I had to act like everything was normal. Evan came into the office as if he owned the world, his cologne arriving 5 seconds before he did. Morning, partner, he said lightly. The word partner nearly made me laugh. Morning, I replied, turning back to my monitor. He lingered near my desk, waiting for me to ask about his business trip. When I didn't, he added, I'll be out tomorrow. Meeting potential investors for our expansion. Expansion. I repeated. Viridian 2.0, he said, flashing the grin that used to charm me. It's time to modernize. Make it more. My vision. I smiled faintly. Sounds promising. He had no idea I'd already traced every one of his investor emails, every wire transfer, every private pitch he'd sent behind my back. Lauren's team was preparing an injunction request. We just needed one last document to tie it all together. The official signature from Mason authorizing the duplicate company accounts. The break came from the unlikeliest place. Friday night, a message arrived from Mason himself. Subject: I need to talk. Privately. I made a mistake. I didn't know he'd take it this far. I met him in a small bar near the pier, the kind of place where no one paid attention to who was talking in the corner booth. Mason looked older than I remembered. Eyes red, tie loosened, guilt heavy in his voice. He told me it was just a restructure, he said. He said you were burned out and planning to step down. I believed him. But when he started transferring client funds, I realized he was setting you up. How deep are you in? I asked. Deep enough to lose my license, he said, staring into his drink. But I can fix it. I've got the transfer receipts. Every single one. I'll testify if I have to. I leaned back, studying him. Why now? He sighed. Because I saw the look on your face that night on the patio. You didn't yell. You didn't cry. Just left. And I knew the storm was coming. I'd rather be standing behind you than in front of it. I didn't thank him. Not yet. Forgiveness wasn't part of the deal. Truth was. When I got home, the city lights were reflected in the rain-slick windows. I poured a glass of water and looked at the evidence piling up. USB, screenshots, bank statements, now Mason's confession. This wasn't just about saving my company anymore. It was about reclaiming the narrative. Evan thought leadership was about charisma. He thought being the face made him untouchable. He forgot that faces fade. But systems, the quiet, methodical work, last forever. I opened my email to Lauren and typed 4 words. It's time to move. Her reply was immediate. Agreed. Monday morning, 9 a.m. boardroom. He thought Monday's meeting was about expansion. It was about exposure. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp cold that makes the city look sharper, almost surgical. Seattle's skyline glittered under a pale sun, but inside Viridian's glass tower, the air was thick with anticipation. Evan had called a company strategy meeting. He sent the email himself, bold, confident, seeing every senior executive and team lead. The subject line read, New Vision for Viridian 2.0. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Lauren and I had spent all weekend preparing. Every document. Every financial record. Every recorded message. By the time the meeting began, the stage was already set. When I entered the conference room at 9:02 a.m., Evan was at the head of the table, smiling like a man stepping onto a TED Talk stage. He wore his favorite charcoal suit, the one I'd bought him for our 5th anniversary, irony written in every stitch. Ah, there she is, he said smoothly. Claire, right on time. We were just talking about new directions. The team turned toward me. 20 faces, some nervous, some curious. Gina avoided eye contact, but I caught the faintest nod from her. Mason sat stiffly, pale and sweating, a folder on his lap that I knew contained the receipts. Evan continued, oblivious. As most of you know, we've been exploring an expansion into enterprise markets. I'll be taking a more visionary role in leading that transition. Viridian Consulting Group, our new sister company, will focus on. He didn't get to finish. Lauren, seated quietly at the far end, opened her laptop and projected a slide onto the massive monitor behind him. At the top of the screen, bold white letters glowed against a black background. Project Echo, Internal Records. The room froze. Evan turned, confusion flickering across his face. What's this? I stood. It's your vision, Evan. Just not the one you wanted the company to see. Lauren clicked the next slide. Screenshots appeared. Annotated emails, falsified behavioral reports, bank transfers to Viridian Consulting Group LLC. Gina let out a shaky breath. Mason's eyes closed. Wait, this is, Evan began, his charm cracking. Forgery. I offered. Because I have timestamps, IP logs, and your signature on every document. Lauren changed slides again. A spreadsheet filled the screen, column after column of client funds rerouted under his name. The financial transactions, she said calmly, show systematic embezzlement and misrepresentation of ownership. The room fell silent except for the hum of the projector. Evan's smile collapsed into something unrecognizable. He looked around, searching for allies. None came. Mason, he snapped, tell them this was part of the restructure plan. Mason stood slowly. His voice trembled but carried weight. No, Evan. It wasn't restructuring. It was theft. I've already submitted full documentation to Clara's attorney. Evan's jaw clenched. You spineless. Enough, I said, my tone cutting through the tension like glass. This company has survived on discipline, not delusion. And as of this moment, you are relieved of all leadership duties. He turned toward me, disbelief twisting his features. You can't. I can, I said, sliding a folder across the table. And I already did. The board approved the emergency injunction this morning. Lauren added, effective immediately. Mr. Reeves has no access to company accounts, correspondence, or client portfolios. Security will escort you from the premises. The silence was absolute. Then from the back of the room someone clapped. One clap. Then another. Then a few more, quiet, cautious, growing louder. Evan's face reddened. You think this is over? I made this company. No, I said softly. You borrowed it. He opened his mouth to speak, but security entered the room. 2 guards in dark suits. Professional. Silent. Mr. Reeves, one of them said. We'll need you to come with us. He didn't fight. He didn't speak. He just stared at me as if trying to find the woman he could still control. But she wasn't there anymore. When the doors closed behind him, the room exhaled collectively. I looked at the team, faces I'd hired, mentored, defended through endless deadlines. Let's get back to work, I said. We've got a company to rebuild. That afternoon I stood by the window in my office watching the city move below. Emails poured in. Clients expressing support, investors confirming loyalty. Mason's full confession arrived by courier, notarized and time-stamped. The next step was legal, but the hardest part was already done. The myth of Evan Reeves had finally collapsed under the weight of evidence. I closed my laptop and whispered to the empty office. Checkmate. He filed for half the company. He thought he'd take my work, my name, and my reputation. But he forgot I built everything on paper. Before we continue, thank you for standing by Clara's journey. If you believe justice tastes best when served with proof, hit subscribe. It's free and it helps share stories of strength like this one. Now let's continue. The subpoena arrived on a Wednesday morning. Plain envelope, cream paper, the kind that pretends to be polite while carrying a knife. Evan was suing for equitable division of assets. Half of Viridian Analytics, citing emotional distress and professional displacement. In other words, he was claiming victimhood. Lauren read the document once, twice, then set it down. Classic narcissist playbook, she said dryly. He's going to frame you as erratic and unstable. Everything in Project Echo was designed for this. He was right. His legal statement painted me as obsessive, controlling, and emotionally volatile. He even quoted my late-night emails, twisting them into evidence of insomnia and work-driven mania. But the thing about data, it always tells the truth. Eventually. Lauren smiled. Let him talk. We'll let the evidence do the heavy lifting. The courtroom smelled of old wood and nerves. Evan sat across from me, a shadow of his former self but still performing for an audience. He wore another expensive suit, this one slightly too tight. Probably the last one he could afford. His lawyer, young, aggressive, overly confident, stood to speak. Your Honor, my client has been systematically excluded from the company he co-founded. He contributed to the strategic vision, client development, and company growth. Lauren rose slowly, the calm before a hurricane. With respect, Your Honor, she began, Mr. Reeves contributed ideas. Ms. Reeves contributed everything else. She gestured to the stack of binders beside her. Bank statements, client signatures, tax filings, and employee contracts. All in her handwriting, her approvals, her name. Evan's lawyer shifted. We acknowledge her effort, but the company was founded in their marriage. That makes it community property. Lauren cut in smoothly. Not when there's a prenup. The room stilled. She handed the judge a document, signed, dated, and notarized 8 years ago. Clause 6b. Any business founded by either party using personal savings, prior assets, or independent contracts remains the sole property of the founder. The judge adjusted his glasses. Mr. Reeves, did you sign this? Evan hesitated. It was symbolic. Lauren's smile sharpened. Then I'm sure the court will symbolically honor it. Laughter rippled quietly through the benches. By the second hearing, Evan's case was crumbling. Nathan, the same friend who had once laughed at his jokes, now sat as a witness for me. He testified that Project Echo had been a calculated attempt to gaslight me and fabricate instability. He brought message logs, group chats, even notes from their Thursday meetings. One message from Evan read, "Keep documenting her. When she breaks, we take control." The judge's eyebrows rose. This is deeply troubling. Evan tried to speak, but every word he uttered sounded smaller, hollower, desperate. Then came the coup de grace, Gina's testimony. She'd kept copies of every redirected payment, every client file he'd touched. Lauren presented them in chronological order, each document a nail sealing the coffin of his credibility. By the time it was over, Evan's lawyer looked like he wanted to disappear. The judge leaned forward. Given the presented evidence, this court finds that Ms. Reeves is the sole proprietor of Viridian Analytics. Mr. Reeves's actions constitute deliberate financial misconduct. His claim for half the company is denied. It was over. Just like that. But justice doesn't end in the courtroom, it echoes outside it. Within days, word spread across the industry. Clients dropped Evan's name from their lists. His so-called investors pulled out, citing integrity concerns. The shadow company, Viridian Consulting Group, was suspended pending investigation for fraud. And then came the email. From Evan at viridianconsulting.com. Subject: we need to talk. Clara, I know you think this is revenge, but you're destroying me. Can't we negotiate? I'll walk away quietly if you give me 10%. Just 10. I stared at the message for a long time before typing a single sentence. You already got your share, Evan. It's called consequences. Then I hit send, archived the thread, and blocked his address. The next week, Lauren called with a grin in her voice. The fraud unit found his offshore transfers. Hidden accounts in Belize and Malta. He's facing charges now. He'll plead out, but he's done. Good, I said softly. Let him rebuild something of his own this time. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Lauren added, "You know, Clara, most people would have collapsed under what he did." I looked out my office window at the city I'd rebuilt from the ground up. I did collapse, I said. But only once. After that, I learned to build differently so no one could ever take it again. That night, I stayed late at the office. The skyline glowed, rain streaking the glass like silver threads. For the first time in years, I didn't feel watched, manipulated, or second-guessed. Viridian was finally mine. Officially, legally, emotionally. Every shadow he'd tried to cast had become part of my light. When he walked into the courtroom that final morning, even the judge called me Ms. Reeves. So, the man who once called me his assistant was now asking for mercy. 6 months after the lawsuit ended, Viridian Analytics had tripled its revenue. Our team grew, our reputation soared, and for the first time the company felt alive, without noise, without ego, without him. But Evan wasn't done trying to haunt me. Failure had made him reckless. He filed one last appeal, claiming emotional damages and reputational harm. Lauren called me the morning of the hearing. "Don't worry," she said. "This isn't about proof anymore. It's about closure." When I entered the courthouse, I barely recognized him. The man who'd strutted through boardrooms in $2,000 suits now sat hunched in a cheap blazer, his tie frayed, his confidence gone. He looked smaller, almost hollow. His new lawyer, a public defender, fumbled through a prepared statement about reconciliation and shared responsibility. Evan's eyes flicked up when the judge spoke my name. "Ms. Reeves," the judge said, "you've provided overwhelming evidence in this case. Do you wish to comment before I close proceedings?" I stood slowly. The courtroom was silent. Once I'd been afraid to speak, afraid my words would sound too sharp, too emotional. Now my voice was calm, even deliberate. "I don't want to ruin him," I said. "That was never my goal. I just wanted the truth on record." Evan's gaze lifted, searching for pity. He found none. I continued, "What he did, documenting me, manipulating clients, trying to steal what I built, wasn't about business. It was about control. But I've learned something. Control isn't power. Clarity is." The judge nodded once, decisively. Claim denied. Case closed. The gavel hit wood. Just like that, it was done. Outside the courthouse, cameras waited, reporters buzzing with microphones. Lauren slipped her sunglasses on and muttered, "Smile for the press, see?" I did. Because that's what victory looked like. Not gloating, not rage, just composure. By afternoon, news headlines read, Viridian CEO triumphs in landmark case against ex-husband's fraud scheme. Clients called. Investors congratulated. But I didn't feel triumphant. Still. That evening, I went home to my apartment, the one overlooking the Sound. It was simple. White walls, clean lines, a balcony that caught the sunset perfectly. No echoes of him here. I opened a bottle of wine, not Bordeaux, not his favorite, and poured a glass. On the table lay the final set of court documents. I signed them quietly. No music. No celebration. Just closure. For the first time, I didn't feel the need to prove anything. Not to him. Not to anyone. Gina messaged me that night. Gina, Mason says he's been offered a compliance role at another firm. He told me he'll never forget what he learned from you. Me, tell him learning's only real if you use it. She replied with a smile emoji. Some wounds heal in silence. 3 weeks later, Viridian hosted its annual retreat at a lakeside resort. No grand speeches, no forced laughter, just my team relaxed and free. During dinner, Sarah, the new project lead, stood up with a glass raised high. To the woman who taught us that power isn't volume, it's direction. The team cheered. I didn't need to say a word. That applause wasn't for revenge. It was for resilience. Months passed. One gray afternoon while running errands, I stopped at a small market near Pike Place. And there he was. Evan. Standing by the olive oil section, staring at price tags like each number was an insult. His hair was thinner, his shoulders slumped, his hands trembling slightly as he reached for the cheapest bottle. He looked up and froze. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. There was no anger in me anymore. No bitterness. No thrill of superiority. Just clarity. He opened his mouth as if to say something. I smiled faintly, not with pity, not with triumph, just peace. Then I turned away, picked up a bottle of my own and walked toward the register. Behind me, I heard the quiet sound of a cart rolling away. That night, as the city lights shimmered across the water, I thought about everything that had happened. The lawsuits, the lies, the manipulation. And how somehow I'd come out of it all still standing, stronger, quieter, untouchable. There's a particular kind of freedom that comes after you stop defending your worth. It's not loud. It doesn't need applause. It just is. He once said I'd never be more than the woman behind his success. Now my name was on the cover of Forbes Women in Leadership. And his name wasn't mentioned at all. A year passed. 12 quiet, steady months that turned Viridian Analytics from a survival story into a global consultancy. Our projects expanded to London, Singapore, and Sydney. Our workforce doubled. Our reputation soared. But what mattered most wasn't the scale, it was the culture. No more Thursday night shouting matches. No more egos demanding worship. Just people who believed that success didn't need to come at the cost of someone else's dignity. I often stayed late at the office not because I had to, but because I wanted to. The hum of computers, the city lights beyond the window. It no longer felt heavy. It felt earned. The Forbes feature came out on a Monday morning. The title read, Clara Reeves, the woman who built an empire out of betrayal. They'd sent a photographer to the office 2 weeks earlier. He'd asked me to look out the window and smile. Like you're thinking about everything you survived, he'd said. I didn't need to act. The article opened with a sentence that made me pause. Once written off as her husband's assistant, Clara Reeves now leads one of the fastest-growing analytics firms in North America. Lauren texted me minutes after it went live. You did it. No noise. No drama. Just results. I replied, the best revenge is relevance. That night, I hosted a dinner at the office for the leadership team. The long conference table, once the battlefield of deceit, was now a place of laughter. Gina sat to my left, Mason across from her. Both of them had become something rare. People who grew from their mistakes instead of hiding behind them. Halfway through dinner, Mason stood, raising his glass. I used to think leadership was about control, he said. Then I met a woman who led by clarity. Clara, thank you for proving that integrity scales. Applause echoed through the room. It wasn't the kind of applause that fed ego. It fed purpose. A week later, a letter arrived, handwritten, postmarked from Oregon. The handwriting was unmistakable. Evan. Clara. I've been attending therapy for 6 months now. They say self-awareness is the first step to change. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just want to thank you. Losing you forced me to meet myself for the first time. I hope you're happy. I hope you sleep well. You deserve both. I read it twice. Then I folded it neatly and placed it in a folder labeled closed. Not to hold on to it, but to acknowledge it existed. Forgiveness, I realized, isn't about letting someone back in. It's about letting them stop taking up space in your story. Months later, I stood on a stage in front of 200 young entrepreneurs. The panel was titled Women Who Rebuilt. When my turn came, I looked out at the crowd, faces full of fear and ambition, and said, "Your worth isn't defined by who recognizes it. It's defined by what you build when no one's watching. And if someone ever tries to make you smaller, remember, you can't shrink a person who already knows her size." The applause that followed wasn't thunderous. It was steady, warm, real. That evening, as I walked out of the auditorium, the night air was cool and clean. A young woman stopped me near the doors. "Ms. Reeves," she said shyly, "I just wanted to say, I was in a toxic partnership too. Listening to you today, seeing what you built, it gave me hope." I smiled. "Then that means this story did its job." She left, and I stood there for a while watching the city lights shimmer. It struck me how full circle life can be. Once, I'd built everything for someone else's approval. Now, I built for women like her, to show that survival wasn't the end of the story. Thriving was. When I got home, I opened the balcony doors and let the night breeze in. The lights of Seattle stretched out before me, reflections dancing on the bay. I poured a glass of wine, opened my laptop, and began writing the first draft of something new. The Viridian Foundation for Women in Leadership. A program to fund, mentor, and train women starting their own companies, especially those rebuilding after betrayal, divorce, or loss. Because power means nothing if you don't pass it on. A year earlier, I had walked out of a house full of laughter that wasn't mine. Tonight, I sat in a home filled with silence that was entirely mine. And I finally understood. Peace doesn't mean the noise stops. It means you no longer need to respond to it. If you were Clara, after everything she endured, what would you build from your pain? Tell me in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of strength, justice, and transformation. Because every ending can become a beginning.